The boxes were stacked against the garage wall, 4 of them, labeled in my mother's handwriting, Dara bedroom, like I was a storage unit being cleared out. I stood in the doorway of that garage for a long time, long enough to hear the game on TV inside, long enough to smell the turkey already in the oven, long enough to understand that I had driven 4 hours to a house that no longer had a room for me in it. What was in the folder? I'd brought the one sitting in the passenger seat of my car. I'll get to that. But first, let me tell you how a person gets to the point of being boxed up in her own family's garage. Before I go on, if this story connects with you, I would love it if you took a second to like and subscribe. Only if it genuinely speaks to you. And drop your location and your local time in the comments. I love knowing where in the world you're listening from. My name is Dara. I'm 35 years old. And this is the story of the day I found out I'd been a tenant all along and my parents forgot what that meant. I grew up in Millhaven, Pennsylvania. Population 9,000, give or take. My parents' house is on Sycamore Ridge Road, a white Cape Cod with dark green shutters and a side porch where my father has grilled every weekend since 1997. I have had the same bedroom in that house since I was 4 years old. Back left corner, window facing the yard, slanted ceiling on one side because of the roofline. I know it like I know my own hands. I'm an occupational therapist. I work at Hargrove Rehabilitation Center in Pittsburgh, 40 miles from Millhaven. 3 years ago, my parents hit a rough patch financially. My father's hours at the machine shop got cut. My mother's car needed a new transmission and they were behind on the mortgage. I started sending them $800 a month. We called it rent. My bedroom in exchange for a contribution to the household. My mother said it made her feel better having it be a transaction instead of a gift. I said fine. I sent the money every month on time for 36 months. That's $28,800. My brother's name is Fletcher. He's 29. He cycles through enthusiasms. He's done real estate school, bartending, a food truck that lasted 4 months, and most recently a new girlfriend named Brianna, who he has known for exactly 3 weeks as of Thanksgiving. I heard about Brianna in a text from my mother on the Tuesday before the holiday. She said Brianna was coming for Thanksgiving and was very sweet and had nowhere else to go. She did not mention the bedroom. I arrived Wednesday evening traffic, adding an extra hour to the drive. I came in through the side door the way I always do. My mother was at the stove. She turned around, smiled, and then immediately looked at a point slightly left of my face, which is what she does when she's avoiding something. I said, "Where should I put my bag?" She said, "Fletcher has Brianna staying in the guest room, so we thought maybe you could take the pull-out in the den." I said, "That's the guest room. My room is the back left bedroom." She said, "Honey, Brianna doesn't know anyone here, and we wanted her to be comfortable, and your room has the nicer closet." I said, "Where are my things?" She looked at my father, who had appeared in the kitchen doorway. He said, "We just moved them to the garage temporarily. Just for the weekend." 4 boxes, my books, my spare clothes, the framed photo of my grandmother, my things in a garage in November for a woman I had never met who had been dating my brother since Halloween. I went to the garage. I looked at the boxes. I thought about 36 months of $800. I thought about the roof-lined ceiling and the window facing the yard. I went back to my car. I got the folder from the passenger seat. Inside it was a document I'd stumbled across 3 months earlier when I'd asked my parents for a copy of a canceled check for my own tax records. My mother had scanned and sent me a packet of documents, not realizing she'd included more than I asked for. In that packet was a signed rental agreement. My name, their address, $800 per month drawn up by their accountant for tax deduction purposes. It cited Pennsylvania tenant law. It had both my parents' signatures and mine because I had signed the original payment authorization without reading past the first paragraph. By the terms of that agreement, I was a tenant with legal right of occupancy to the designated unit, the back left bedroom, and could not be removed without 30 days written notice. They had given me 0 days notice. I walked back into the house. I found my parents in the kitchen. Fletcher and Brianna were in the living room. I could hear the TV, could hear her laughing at something, a high, easy laugh. I set the folder on the kitchen table. I opened it to the rental agreement. I placed it in front of my father. I said, "You filled this with your accountant 3 years ago. It's a legal rental agreement. It names the back left bedroom as my designated unit. It requires 30 days written notice for any change in occupancy." Silence. My mother said, "Dara, it's just one weekend." I said, "I know. I'm not here to make Thanksgiving a disaster, but I need you to understand what you actually have with me. You have a tenant who has paid $28,800 without missing a single month. And tonight, I'm sleeping in my room." My father looked at the document for a long time. He's a methodical man, my father. He reads things fully before he responds. I watched him read it. I watched him understand it. He said, "I didn't know Diane included this in the tax filings." I said, "I didn't either until 3 months ago." He set the paper down. He looked at my mother. Something passed between them. Not guilt exactly, but the specific expression of two people realizing a thing has been managed casually that was not casual at all. He said, "I'll talk to Fletcher." He said, "Thank you." I picked up the folder. I walked to the den and I sat on the pull-out, not to sleep, just to sit, and I listened to the house around me. The oven timer, the TV, my mother moving quietly around the kitchen, not coming to find me. 15 minutes later, my father knocked on the den door and said that Brianna would be moving to the pull-out and my room would be available. I said, "I appreciate it, Dad." He stood there for a moment, hand still on the doorframe. He said, "I should have called you first." I said, "Yes, you should have." He nodded. He left. Thanksgiving dinner was not the catastrophe it could have been. Brianna was, in fact, very sweet, quiet, a little overwhelmed, clearly trying to navigate a family she didn't yet understand. I didn't hold it against her. She hadn't known about any of it. I talked to her about her job. She was a dental hygienist in Millhaven, and she asked me about Pittsburgh, and we had a perfectly civil conversation. Fletcher didn't speak to me directly all evening. That was fine. My mother served the turkey and the sweet potatoes and the cranberry sauce. I'd been eating at that table my whole life, and somewhere in the middle of it she looked down the table at me and said very quietly, "I'm sorry, Dara. We should have asked." I said, "Yes." She said, "You've been generous with us for a long time." I said, "I know." That was the whole conversation. It wasn't a grand reckoning, but it was the first time in 35 years I'd heard my mother use the word generous about something I'd done for them, and I let it land where it needed to. I stopped the monthly payments in January. Not as punishment. I'd just done the math and realized my parents' finances had stabilized and that I had spent 3 years deprioritizing my own savings for a contribution that had become invisible. I sent my mother a text. "I'm going to stop the monthly transfer after this month. I think you're in good shape now. Love you." She wrote back, "I understand. Thank you for everything you did." That was the acknowledgement I'd needed. Small, specific, true. I drove back to Pittsburgh the Friday after Thanksgiving. The folder on the passenger seat again, the folder that had been there the whole time without me knowing what it meant. The Pennsylvania hills in November are brown and bare and somehow still beautiful. The bone structure of something that will green again in March. I thought about my grandmother's photo still in the box in the garage and reminded myself to carry it inside before I left. Some things you have to retrieve yourself. No one is coming to bring them to you. But they're still yours. Have you ever realized that a relationship you thought was informal had terms and that you'd been honoring yours all along while someone else forgot they had any? Drop your location in the comments. I'd love to hear from you.